Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the latest episode of the Donbass Devushka podcast. Today, our very esteemed and special guest, the ultimate troll, Ukraine's most wanted Twitter user, it is Jackson Hinkle.
How's it going? That's quite the intro.
Well, it's true.
Well deserved.
Very well.
Thank you for having me on.
Indeed. Let's start, I think, a little with your personal politics, Jackson. Take us back to sort of where it comes from. Of course, you had your Democrat background, and sort of how did that grow into Russophilia? How did that grow into this sort of communism thing you have going on? Take it away.
Yeah, I got involved in politics when I was younger in high school. I was into environmental issues, which I was like a Democrat into an environmental issues, which is crazy to think now where I'm at. Atheist as well. And I don't know, I just always say that, it's not embarrassing to change your views. People always try to own you on Twitter, social media for changing your views and developing. I say it's embarrassing if, when confronted with the facts of the world, you refuse to change your views based upon what you're witnessing, if it does change your views or challenge them. And if you keep the views you had that you know are wrong just because you're too embarrassed to change your views. But I got involved in politics. I ran for mayor in my hometown. I was like, the cringe levels were off the charts. I was doing stuff like I had monthly meetings with Nancy Pelosi. I was on her youth council. And slowly but surely, I kind of just learned about the world. I started my own YouTube show after I lost my city council election. I got second place. And when I started the YouTube show, I always was interested in foreign policy, but there wasn't a lot going on in the world besides, like airstrikes on innocent civilians in Africa or the dirty war in Syria and the remnants of, Iraq and Afghanistan, that sort of stuff. So I was interested in covering all of that. And I was always following what was going on in Russia and Ukraine, the Donbass. I was looking at the gray zone for a lot of my coverage on that. I was talking a lot about also, Latin American politics at the start of my YouTube show. And then, like so many others, I just was so captivated by what was going on in Russia, in China over the past several years in particular, because despite the fact that, there wasn't a war or whatever, it is the most interesting thing in the world is how these like deep sea undercurrents of power, of global power dynamics are changing. I think that's what draws so many of us to it. And seeing these economic models begin to change, see countries like China and Russia and, maybe satellite countries aren't the best. They're partners, they're international partners, how they're all rising, the West is falling. That's what really drew me into all of this. And the war, of course, is just like the most acute representation. It's the most like saturated representation of all of these global dynamics changing in the multipolar world setting in. So I started to cover it, and I just find it insane the level of propaganda that so many in the West, particularly Europe, are falling to. It's so easy to see through. And that's why they're censoring people like you guys so much when you tell the truth and when you expose the truth to average everyday Westerners who are just, trying to make it through their lives. And, they're seeing their standard of living deteriorate as we fund this proxy war in Ukraine and we try to, prop up the petrodollar as the world is changing. And there's really nothing that we can do about it.
We've all lost an account in one way or the other because of this information we're pushing, haven't we? I know DD has. Alex, you just joined, but I've lost a Twitter and we lost our Patreon during this whole thing.
We lost the Twitter. We lost Buy Me a Coffee twice. We've been banned from Amazon hosting, web hosting. We've been banned from Shopify. We've been banned from Public. We've been banned from Stripe, so we can't even get payments anymore. It's just
for ideas. Just for ideas.
Well, the Stripe was like, we don't like your name. I was like, well, we're not changing it, so
It's just
Uh,
I mean, like,
yeah,
yeah, we all lose these accounts and stuff. And I mean, look at this. The most clear example of all is how they feel about us, you know, and what they would love to do to us is what just happened recently to Daria Dugina. May she rest in peace. You know, like they actually want to kill us. All these people that say this shit online, they don't possess, most of them, I don't think, the power to actually, like, the power you need in yourself to actually kill someone. Not that I condone that. I don't want to offend any, you know, of our places we might be broadcasting this to. I don't know, but they don't have the power to do this within them, but they want us to be dead. And that's why they celebrate the assassination of someone like her, who is not a soldier, not a politician who had any say over this, but was simply an intellectual and a thinker.
yeah. She
They martyred
Oh,
a
sorry.
girl
Go
for
ahead,
her
Alex.
ideas. That's literally they martyred this girl who hadn't even turned 30 for what she thought, and more so perhaps for what her father thought. This wasn't even her guilt. She was simply the easiest way to get at him.
Yeah,
And
it was
also,
disgusting.
yeah, and also it was just her 30th birthday, so just happy birthday, and I'm so sorry to her father.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's crazy. And that's the only way that, you know, these narratives, like, you know, pro-Ukraine narratives, continue for as long as they do. They wouldn't be able to do all of this, to have as much public support for Zelensky in Ukraine and the war effort and animosity towards Putin if it weren't for the crazy levels of censorship. I mean, Russia in it of itself is literally so culturally similar to the United States. Last night I took a date to the Nutcracker, and it was beautiful. And you had all these you had all these people in Los Angeles, liberals wearing masks. They're, you know, probably boosted to the max with their COVID vaccines, probably hate Russia, wants Russia to go through a regime change. And they're sitting there and they're listening to this beautiful, beautiful composition by Tchaikovsky. And it's just like, we're so culturally similar. We love each other's people. But if it wasn't for the censorship, if it wasn't for the propaganda, I think we all know they wouldn't be able to manufacture these sorts of crises. But because they control the levers of power, that's how they're able to manufacture these outcomes.
Yes, absolutely. But I think the other thing is that Russia has effectively declared war on the neoliberal agenda. The Russian constitution, in fact, contains the phrase, a marriage is between a man and a woman. We support women who increase our population. The more children you have, the higher your stipend, so on. And there's medals for motherhood. It's become such a foreign concept in the West, this concept of, you know, the traditional family, the nuclear unit. It's disquieting to see from the side.
Yeah, you get canceled if you challenge it, as you all know. Like, I can't say anything on Twitter about even like masculinity, or else it's, oh, he's a white 23-year-old rich kid who just doesn't know what he's talking about. It's like, no, this is the foundation of our country. This is the foundation of our revolution and the people who founded this nation and the ideas it was founded upon. And Russia still holds strong to that, and that's why it's so amazing. I mean, like, the women of Russia are not whores. They're not degenerates. They're not sleeping with 1,000 men every single week, you know? The men of Russia are strong. They protect for their family. They care for their family. You have the strong family units, like you just said, and you can listen. I mean, this is, it's like that's the craziest part of all. It's not like this is something has any sort of substantive challenge in Russia. I mean, Putin very openly talks about this stuff. If you look back to his Oliver Stone interviews, and Oliver Stone asked him, you know, what do you think about gay people? And he's upfront and honest. He's like, well, you know, gay people, I don't think they should be prosecuted, but do I think that they should be able to adopt kids? No, I don't. I think you have to have a mother. I think you have to have a father. This is very important for the foundation of any country. And again, just saying that simple fact, you literally get canceled into oblivion on, you know, Western Twitter for pointing that out. But it is a fact. It is the truth. And now you have people like Joe Biden who are utilizing the legal code that upholds things like gay marriage, which the majority of Americans do agree on now, that there should be the ability for, gay people to get married and have families and whatnot. But they're using this legal code to try and justify the mutilation of children and taking them through these gender transitions before they even hit the age of 18. And it's clear they just have mental illnesses. So, it's a very, very scary road that we're going down in the West. And I know there's a lot of people who oppose it. Andrew Tate, people like him wouldn't be as, as popular if that wasn't the case. But in the positions of power, you are 100% right. The neoliberal, neoconservative interests are hell-bent on using these woke gender politics, all this stuff, as a wedge against the Eastern powers, against Russia, against China, against Central Asia, against all these rising nations. But the only way they're going to be able to do that is if they propagandize the American public into believing that there is no other way of life than this. So it's a very scary situation we find ourselves in.
And even if you take even if you take like your own opinions or own feelings out of it, regarding everything that you just mentioned, I don't think that I encounter a lot of Americans that aren't even understanding about what woke imperialism is and what it actually consists of. And I think the recent example in Serbia is a really, really good example how Serbia is not even part of the EU, but EU pride was like, you're going to hold our parade and we will put police on the ground to make you hold this parade. Serbia, being a ultra orthodox country, now is forced to hold a parade that they don't want anything to do with, because and they do this because now it's their way to be like, oh, look at Serbia, they're so uncivilized, they won't even let this parade happen, we're just trying to love everybody. And they're saying like, this is against our like very, very core national religion and beliefs. And the EU's like, look at these people, they're so backwards. And that's what woke imperialism is, right? And they do it to Russia too. They do it to Donbass, and they say, Russia's so backwards, they don't even let gay couples adopt children. That's a cultural, religious thing. And you forcing that is just another form of imperialism. And they don't even understand that. So when they try to be like woke and they be against all this imperialism in Africa and global South, they don't see the cultural imperialism that they're pushing on places like Russia, China, Serbia, and places of that nature, Iran, Iraq. So it's just kind of like and really incredible to watch. And like this Zoomer generation, like the earlier Zoomers, or later Zoomers, I mean, it's really strange. But we're watching the collapse of those sort of societies that are built on those kinds of new foundations, and they can't hold their own. They're not going to be able to hold their own against countries like Russia or Serbia that have a very ingrained national fiber, cultural fibers. So
yeah, and look at what just took place at the FIFA World Cup with in Qatar. It's like you have like all these gays going there. They're like wearing their gay pride stuff, and they got a response, and they were shocked at it's like, how are you shocked at this response? You're literally, it's so disrespectful to them. It's just purely like the equivalent of what I would say satanic. It's insane. It's like I struggle to understand how anyone thinks this is okay, but then I have to circle back around to the idea that, yeah, you're right. It is cultural imperialism. They are using this stuff as wedge issues. I mean, look at what they're doing in Ecuador right now. They're saying, okay, Ecuador, if you want fiscal investment in your infrastructure and in your industrialization from the United States, you have to agree with our woke politics. We're going to give you some money to do these drag shows for children, like they're doing all across the United States right now. And like, if you don't do it, then you're not going to get our fiscal investment money. So it's being used and weaponized as a tool. The worst part of all is that the neoconservatives simply don't care about this, so they're happy to go along with it if it achieves their broader geopolitical goals. And that's why it's such a deadly force, and it does work, because you have so many people that are indoctrinated in the States that this is the end all be all. It's a religion of sorts for them. And you look at what the EU is doing to Maloney, what the EU, and I'm not even a fan, but like what the EU is doing to Hungary, and as they're trying to protect their nation from this LGBTQ indoctrination. And people ask, why are you so focused on this, Jackson? Why do you talk so much about it? Because wokeism is the new neoconservatism. This is what it is. So it's something we have to combat. Very dangerous. And I realized it was the most dangerous of all when it wasn't just, okay, they always started off with these like benign interests, like, oh, you just have to respect gay people. I can respect gay people. I cannot like discriminate against them, whatever. But then when it gets to the point where it's like, okay, if you don't agree with misidentifying someone's gender, their like biological, innate, unchangeable being, if you don't call them whatever sort of pronouns that they want you to call them, then we are going to take away your right to free speech. When free speech is under attack, that's when it becomes like this is an all-out war, and there's nothing we can really do to save these people.
Yeah, no, it's very true. One of the most interesting things that I've been having fun with is the recent Twitter purge. And I still think, honestly, it was you who got Keith Olbermann banned. That's my opinion on it. I just wanted to hear some of your thoughts on that, like the whole doxing issue. It's wild.
Yeah, I don't see why. I'm a free speech absolutist. I think Elon's I think he's taken steps in the right direction, but I mean, he still says he's going to censor people for denial of hate or of tragic events. So anyone who talked about Busha in the correct light would have still been censored under Elon Musk. That's why Scott Ritter's still off the internet. And he's got other things, like I was suspended for saying, I said mental health issues should be solved by going to the gym and like focusing on your physical fitness rather than genital mutilation and hormone therapy. And I was suspended for hate speech over saying that. So I think he's got there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And I don't know if he's really up to that challenge. But as far as the doxing situation, yeah, I don't know. I don't think doxing should be given a permanent suspension. Maybe if you're like a repeat abuser and you're just being a troll with it and you're actually, I don't know, but like, I don't make the rules, but I think doxing actually is dangerous. I mean, like real-time doxing is dangerous, obviously. But these are all the people the people who are feigning outrage about getting banned over doxing. They're the ones who supported Taylor Lorenz of the Washington Post when she was doxing the Libs of TikTok woman. They were going to their house and posting all this stuff. It's like, you were literally doxing her and you were supporting her, and you were like crying over, the fact that anyone would say, oh, doxing is bad back then, but now they're all doxing Elon Musk and it's okay. So, it's so backwards. It's so hypocritical. And I will say one time I got a video suspended for doxing. I was like, this is the dumbest thing ever. It was a dead Ukrainian fucking Nazi in the Mariupol bunkers. And they were like sifting through all the trash and garbage they left behind down there, the Russians were. And they showed on video like one of their ID cards. It was a dead guy. And I got my video suspended because I like doxed a dead Nazi. Like, that's not doxing. Doxing is like real-time personal health and safety jeopardization.
What do you think about the backlash against Elon for these accounts being suspended when there was no, I mean, like I got suspended for denying the Tochka missile strike on the Kramatorsk train station. That's how my first Twitter account got banned. I argued that it wasn't the Russian side that did it, and I got banned for that. And now with all of the accounts being banned for doxing and they're calling them journalists and everything, I have a real hard time with caring about any of that at all.
Yeah, like what? Did you have a picture of the missile in Kramatorsk? Did you have a picture of a Tochka U or something? Did you have photo evidence? like
anything.
You literally we have the reverse azimuth, we have the photo evidence, we have and it's just like, nope, you're getting banned still,
Yeah, still.
Yeah, I don't, it's like, no, I think personally, Personally, I think that these people who are doing this to our country should actually be deported for what they're doing to our country. Like, it's just treason. Now, do I think they should be like held, killed, treason, all this stuff? No. But I think that at the end of the day, you're literally attacking the foundation of our country with the stuff they're doing. And it's bigger than the Elon Musk thing. I mean, like, Keith Olbermann, are you kidding me? This guy's literally Satan reincarnated. Like, so I think they should be deported. Now, who do we send them to is the question, because I don't really want our problems to become other people's problems. But, they are problems and they are ruining our country. So I don't know what we're going to do with them, but I think they should be banned forever. Just get them off the platform. That's what they would do to us. They'd say, oh, they're Putin propagandists. Take them off forever. Yeah, take them off forever. Elon's too nice. Elon's way too nice to these people. He's letting them have too much power. And people are saying this is an abuse of power. Let's play a game of like putting ourselves in someone else's shoe. If AOC was being doxxed in real time and her every move was being broadcasted to Twitter with an account of hundreds of thousands of followers, and it was like the account was called like AOC's every move, and they were real time doxing her, she would have a congressional hearing over Elon Musk not banning that account immediately, okay? She would try to prosecute him and hold him like legally liable for her health and safety risk. Elon Musk lets these accounts back on in like a few days. That's way too soft. He needs to act with a hammer.
I agree. As for where to
She
deport
called
them,
Elon the other day. She called him a proto-fascist, and I'm just like, girl, you don't even know what fascism is. Like, everything
that's just their go-to, though. That's just what they say. Everything is fascism that is against what they want.
The woman who votes with Israel is gonna call Elon Musk a proto-fascist. So.
As to where we could all deport them, why not just send them to New Zealand and Australia? They can have their own gender bender island down there.
Yeah. If Australia is saying, no one would notice either, so that's a positive.
Yeah.
It's it is such a big problem. I don't know what we're gonna do with it. I do believe there's gonna be a new American revolution. So like, what are they doing in Dutch right now? They're saying they're shutting down all these farmers. If that shit comes to America, which I'm sure it will, they're just using they're using them as like test hubs in that country, in the UK as well, with the climate lockdown stuff they're doing in some small UK towns and communities. They're gonna bring all that here. When that comes here, I mean, like, if we don't have a revolution, I just lose all faith in humanity. But I really do believe that's where we're headed. I mean, look at the dynamics right now in this country. You have everything with Kanye West. You have all this stuff with Trump. You've got it's just really great. You got the Democrats that are the progressives, the squad. Like I said, I used to be a leftist, and I had a lot of hope. Like, I remember how happy I was the day AOC got elected. I donated to her campaign. I thought she was actually going to be like a formidable challenger to the pro-war interests within the Democratic Party. She wasn't talking all this woke stuff. In fact, she did an interview with Glenn Greenwald before she was even elected and said, we need to stop focusing on the woke stuff. That has nothing to do with these like economic issues we're trying to bring solutions to. And now it's just the complete opposite. And it's even worse than that. They're just the useful idiots of the State Department and this woke imperialism. So it's so scary to see where they're headed, because they are ushering in Nazism into America. And I said that like years ago, and everyone was laughing and saying, oh, Jackson, you're crazy. You're being hyperbolic. Am I still being hyperbolic when they're literally encouraging their woke followers to send $90 billion to Nazis in Ukraine? I don't think so.
If I can interject here, regarding the Twitter files, isn't it interesting how quickly Barry Weiss and Matt Taibbi became quote unquote conservative reporters? I mean, they wrote for New York's finest newspapers, and the moment they sort of join the Twitter files, all of a sudden they're all conservatives. It's almost like conservative is a bat the Democrats use to beat their enemies over the head with.
and it's not working. I mean, you have more and more Americans that are leaving the Democratic Party. I mean, I don't know. I don't know about these. I don't know what's going on with like the elections and stuff, but I I think that more and more Americans are definitely sympathetic to Republicans than they were definitely like 6 years ago. That's a no-brainer. Um, but I don't know. It's just they call, and then but then you actually are seeing some pretty interesting things. You're seeing like people such as Marjorie Taylor Greene stand up against the endless proxy war in Ukraine. You're seeing very unlikely forces in the Republican even establishment who are standing up for those rail workers that just got screwed over on their contract by the Democratic Party. Now, not only are the Democrats deregulating these major industries to hurt workers, they're literally adding new regulations in to prevent workers from enjoying the same democratic labor organizing rights that we've had since FDR. So the Democrats, I don't know what road they're going down, but it's clearly an authoritarian one. And Americans don't like that. And Americans, despite the fact that the Republican Party still stands against many of their interests, are choosing them over the Democrats.
Let's actually take this sort of fascism and expand on it. The US interpretations of the concepts of both communism and fascism have degraded beyond any hope. Of course, the great Paul Robeson had a quote he said during his hearing with Senator McCarthy in his ill-fated committee, wherein the first to die in the fight against fascism were always the communists, and that remains true to this day. Could you perhaps expand a little, Jackson, on why America treats communism the way it does, why fascism and communism seem to have switched so, and perhaps discuss the feasibility of a communist movement in America itself?
Well, I think most of these globalists are Trotskyites, and I think that Nazism is the ideological foundation of globalism. And obviously, those two things stand in direct contradiction. They're antithetical to Nazi or to like Marxism, Leninism. And I'm a Marxist, and I'm a Stalinist, and at the end of the day, what we just have to look at it in real world terms. What are the globalists, again, being their ideological foundation is Nazism? What are they doing right now? They're embodying a Malthusian doctrine of degrowth and depopulation. Okay, so what is the opposite of that? It looks like China today. It's industrialization, it's growth, it's developing productive forces, it's lifting everyone to levels of economic prosperity. That's what she's been able to accomplish over the past several years. I mean, China, the Communist Party of China, in the last 40 years, they've lifted 840 million people out of poverty. They are a strong commodities producing nation. They're rebuilding, they have a new middle class. Russia, strong commodities producing nation. They're building a new alternative to the dollar global reserve currency. All of these things challenge the motives of the West, which again are degrowth and depopulation. Russia and China say that they want you to have, they want to have larger populations that are again more economically prosperous. They want countries that are rising like Indonesia to tap into what they have, what they've been able to accomplish. And the West is pushing for in Africa right now for them to not be allowed to industrialize, their oil supplies, their raw mineral resources, their gas supplies. They are keeping their population cucked into this project of global serfdom by buying out politicians, and regime change, all these various factors of power and control that they've employed on nations throughout the past 70 years. But at its core, I think that, yeah, the primary forces at play here are globalism, depopulation, degrowth, and then whether it's communism or whether it's, an innate, like, I don't know, Russia is Russia. I mean, you look at someone like Putin, how he grew up, the upbringing he had, the material reality of his youth and like the jobs he had, who his father was, who his grandfather was. And you can't tell me that like, and you also can look at like the KPRF and the power dynamic they hold with Putin. You can't tell me that this guy is not sympathetic to communism. I mean, he just is. Even if he doesn't call himself that, he's basically a communist. Most of America are basically communists. They just have like a knee-jerk gut reaction to the word communist. But I mean, if you ask them point by point, do you stand with this? Do you stand with this? Do you stand with this? They're going to tell you, yeah, I stand with all those things, and that is communism. They don't stand with the green fascist agenda. They don't stand with, this queer ideology, all the trans stuff. They don't stand with, big corporations working with the government to suppress the masses and to silence us. They don't stand with private capital dictating global politics like the City of London and Wall Street do. So it's quite simple. I always approach it. I try to approach it in a manner that's not going to tap into those knee-jerk reactions. But at the end of the day, I know who I am, and I think I know what resonates with people. And America is literally. I mean, look at the Communist Party of the United States and its history here. It has a very strong history here. It was one of the only formidable challengers in party politics to the duopoly that we still see today. And I think maybe we'll get there again, but will it be under the same title? I don't know.
We can tie in a little to the workers and the blue collar with JM here.
Hi, yes. No, my name is just me. I'm another one of the admins here at Donbass Devushka. Thank you for my part for being here, Jackson. So you've touched, of course, upon the knee-jerk reaction, the visceral reaction people have to communism, and how even someone like Putin, who is typically identified as a more conservative figure in Russia, just doesn't have that same knee-jerk reaction. And when people actually break down into the achievements of communism or the individual components of what communists actually strive for when they're in power, people actually quite like that from across the political spectrum. But it seems as though there is a dearth of what one might call class consciousness, not just in the United States, throughout the world, but though you might not tell it from my accent, I'm initially an American and you're an American. So could you tell us about what the state is of class consciousness in America? Because it seems as though a lot of homilies are paid to the working class, the working man, blue collar workers. We hear a lot of that from Joe Biden and Donald Trump, and yet the policies and the politicians who people vote for, many of them working class, all appear to be antithetical to a lot of their interests because things just keep getting worse. So could you take us into a bit about your perception of class consciousness in the United States?
Yeah. I mean, we do have class consciousness, and it's a really it's like a very fraught issue here, because you have all these communists who think that the working class are like blue-haired, mentally ill, furry Starbucks baristas. That's not the working class, okay? Like, it's just simply not. These people are not productive laborers. Unless your definition of working class is anyone who's a worker, they are not working class, okay? Who are the working class people? And let's see, do they hold class consciousness? Is there substantive class consciousness? It's the truck drivers of our nation. It's the rail workers of our nation. It's the people who produce our oil, produce our natural gas, produce our coal. These are the productive laborers of our country. And what do these people have in common? And you could go down the line of many, many more professions. Look at the steel workers. They all have a very similar class consciousness of having supported the MAGA movement. Now, were they Republicans? No. Were they Democrats? No. I mean, like, they've been these things at different points in their lives, but they've never considered themselves as like, this is who I am, this is my identity, because their identity is being an American. It's having this class consciousness. That's why When we talk about this thing, MAGA communism, it's become like a popular trend online. It was trending for days and days and days, and it was so provocative. People said, what is this? It doesn't make sense. But it does make sense if you think about it, because again, circle back to all those professions, the productive laborers of our nation, the blue collar working class that built this nation. Those people, while they didn't even necessarily believe in, say, the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, they believed in the MAGA movement. They believed, some of them, in what Bernie Sanders, parts of his agenda were preaching. They believe MAGA, what it did, it reintroduced the question of class consciousness into the American political conversation. No longer is it left versus right. It is up, top versus bottom. It's challenging the World Economic Forum. It's challenging the City of London. It's challenging these interests. And who are the, I'll finish off by saying this, who are the ideological attack dogs on behalf of the World Economic Forum and George Soros and Klaus Schwab? It is the PMC liberal elite. It's the professors of our nation. It's the synthesizers of science in our nation. It's the elitists. It's all these institutions. It's the Starbucks baristas workers. It's the Netflix workers that canceled Dave Chappelle. Okay, they all have a common class consciousness, and it's to protect those above them, because they preach this woke ideology, and they think that's the most important thing that we could be fighting for, when we all know the most important thing we could be fighting for are the interests of those blue collar working class Americans that I was talking about moments ago.
Well, as our shared favorite author once said, they exist now by first defrauding the public and next getting 18 hours work out of their men for 12 hours wages. Sorry, JM, I believe, had a follow-up question. Please.
Yes. So I wanted to go into something specific, because there was, for a time, this bright hope called the Squad for progressives, ostensibly. So Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, and there's one other who, unfortunately, I am forgetting. But the point is that they're closer to our age than they are to Nancy Pelosi, for instance. So it would seem to indicate that younger Democratic politicians coming of age were actually a lot more clued into the fact that life is not fair. Things have not been getting fairer, and we need to push for this, because ultimately the system is not working. And yet a few weeks ago, because you were talking about workers or people who drive our trucks, who are the railway workers and produce our natural gas. A few weeks ago, rail workers went on strike, or tried to, because they don't have sick pay. They're not allowed to take off. They're not allowed to take off sick. And what did the Squad vote for? A bill that did not grant rail workers any rights, but prevented them from striking. So I wanted you to follow up about that, which is about what exactly what is the deal there with the so-called change of the guard that ends up looking like, as the Who said, meet the new boss, same as the old boss, and what can be done about it, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, it's just so disappointing. Again, I was sympathetic to their interests, to say the least. I was very hopeful that they would kind of represent a new guard, and that was so wrong. And again, as we started off the conversation here, what's more embarrassing than getting something wrong like that? Still supporting them in the face of their clearly backwards politics. These people say that they're democratic socialists, okay? But notice how they never, ever, ever, ever will call themselves communists. They'll never, ever associate with Stalin or Mao. They'll never associate with Lenin. When we know, I mean, if you read Marx, socialism and communism were used interchangeably. And they'll all tell you, no, you can't use them interchangeably. They're two very different things. It's like, okay, bitch, explain it. They can't. They're like, it's just diet communism. What does that mean? Well, it means that we support transgender mutilation on kids. No, it doesn't. That's not, it's like, no, this is insane. So they claimed that they were going to stand for all these things. And, you know, the litmus test always first and foremost will be what do you have to say about foreign policy? I mean, are you standing with the agents against U.S. Western imperialism? Are you standing with Syria? Are you standing with Iran? Are you standing with Venezuela? Are you standing with the DPRK and Kim Jong-un? Are you standing? Who are you standing with? Are you? No, you're not. You know, the first time anyone ever questioned AOC and what she was doing was when she had a multi-paragraph part on her website that talked about the war economy and ending the military industrial complex, ending all this stuff. And Samira Khan noticed that it had been removed from AOC's website. She called her out, and AOC responded immediately and said, "Oh, look, it was just a mistake. One of our staffers accidentally took it down." And then weeks later, we saw AOC go out and do some interviews about Israel, fake country, and she started saying, "Oh, I don't really know about Israel. It's a complicated issue." It's like, no, it's not. It's genocide of Palestinians. They're settlers. It's discussing what's going on. And she couldn't give a clear answer on that. So slowly but surely, you saw all these people, AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Cori Bush, Jamal Bone, all these people go down the line on foreign policy issues. And it was failure after failure after failure after failure until so many people woke up to the fact that, like, okay, they're just giving $12 billion increases in the annual budget to the State Department. These people are not, quote unquote, socialists. They are democratic. They're the worst of the worst. They're sheep herders. They are bringing the sheep into the slaughterhouse. They're bringing all these innocent people who have good motives and want the best for the world, and they're herding them into the slaughterhouse as they, put a gun, the barrel of a gun up to their neck. It's like, it's insane what's going on. Why is this the case? Washington corrupts. I don't know what to say. Who knows if they were plants? AOC used to do U.S. aid work in Africa before she ever had any formal political interests, even though we know that's a lie. She always had political interests. So I don't know. Maybe the whole thing is like an MK Ultra psy-op on all of us.
Actually, this is quite a nice segue into our next point, which is America's over-tolerance of fascism abroad. So they have vehemently, for some time, opposed a bill that has recently passed in the UN, pioneered by Russia and her allies, discussing the glorification of Nazism. I mean, we've seen the same adage play over and over again. What can you tell us about sort of the internal politics of that? Is there any push towards banning the sort of fascist ideology internally? Are we seeing, well, obviously we're seeing them try and brand Russia a terrorist state, which will go so very well. But do you think that eventually the US could sort of join Russia in these international efforts to finally uproot fascism and burn what's left of it on the funeral pyre of, a fair world?
I mean, if you get the right people in power, I guess. But the people in power right now, again, like they view fascism, they view Nazism essentially as like a last fray that they couldn't cut off. It was impossible to cut off, a final fray that was sticking out on their beautiful quilt of creating a 1,000-year globalist Reich of control over the masses. Like they don't view it as some sort of a challenging force like they do communism. They view it as part of them and something that went awry and they couldn't stop. Like I said earlier, it is the foundation of their ideology. Why would they be coming out so openly and saying that we are not going to condemn Nazism? Like, why would they be doing this? Why would they be supporting Nazis there? Why did we support the fascists in Colombia? Why do we support Al Qaeda in Syria? Why do we support, Jaish al-Islam and Hayat Tahrir al-Sham and al-Nusra? Why do we provide covert intelligence to DAESH? Why do we do everything we do? Why do we support Israel even? These are all questions that seem insane and backwards, and no one can really put their finger on it until you understand that all these people controlling the United States they're Nazis. I mean, look at okay, so look at George Soros. George Soros, when he was younger, though he makes fun of people who did this, now as an old man, he makes fun of this. But when he was younger, he literally would round up Jews and their belongings in the Holocaust. And he hid himself with his godfather, and they acted like they weren't Jews themselves, and then they were doing this to other Jewish people. Look at Klaus Schwab at the World Economic Forum. His father produced flamethrowers for the German Nazis. I mean, it's not that. Look at NATO. NATO is literally it's the continuation of Nazi Germany and of the Third Reich. And now they're talking about appointing a new woman to fill the soon-to-be vacated spot of Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg. And they're talking about putting this Canadian woman in charge of NATO. Her grandfather was a German Nazi. So it's really not that hard to understand why there's so many sympathies within the elite positions of power in the United States for Nazism. And like I said, I think if you get the right people in there, maybe we'll stand with Russia, maybe we'll stand with these, these institutions, but that would involve also completely draining the deep state, which I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you begin to do that. You'd have to like just hit restart on the whole thing. But it is in our blood, both my grandfathers fought against Nazis. Many kids my age, I'm 23, but most kids my age, I'd say, have like either grandfathers or great grandfathers who killed Nazis. And this used to be like a prideful thing. You look at Ludmila Pavlichenko. What did she say? She said, I didn't kill 300 and some odd men. I killed 300 and some odd fascists. That used to be a thing that Americans celebrated. Now we have to treat everyone with respect, everyone with dignity. It's like, tough luck, bro. Not everyone deserves your respect. Some people deserve a harsher fate.
Well, let's tie this into the future then. What do we think? How does one drain the swamp? What is there a future for America as it is now? How do you fix it? I mean, we've seen your involvement with Jimmy Dore and the People's Party. You could comment a little on that, but how do you fix it? Is there any way to fix it?
It's a question that you always have to think about, because look at Donald Trump. I mean, he's a guy who posed like a very, very minor threat to the deep state. And he was a terrible butcher, even while he was trying to eliminate those forces from the American central powers. And he was still just ruined politically. They said that if you pardon Julian Assange and Edward Snowden, we are going to go through, the Republicans and the Democrats, we're going to go through in actually approving his impeachment, the second impeachment. So they held that over his head. You look at JFK. JFK said, I want to smash the CIA into a million pieces because, what the Dulles brothers were doing. They were going behind his back and literally trying to, amongst many other things. You look at Cuba, you look at the Soviet Union, but they were literally attempting to topple the French government behind JFK's back. So, and he said also, I'm paraphrasing, but he said something to the effect of, after the whole Charles de Gaulle incident, he said, I can't control them. They've become a beast in which I can't control, referring to the Dulles brothers and the CIA. So how do you affect this? How do you change this? I don't know. I mean, Trump was getting his own top officials censored from Twitter at the behest of the FBI in the lead up to the presidential election in 2020. So, I mean, like if you're president, and what do you do? What do you do? I think first you just have to begin sending all these people to the International Criminal Court and actually like encouraging their prosecution, because they are terrorists. They're supporting terrorism. They're supporting terrorism in our own country. It's treason. You could probably get a lot of these people for treason. I mean, you just have to be balls to the wall and like actually hold these people's feet to the fire. Make an example out of them. Why is it that Trump was soft on these people? Why can't we just start imprisoning these people? I mean, you could literally commit citizen's arrest on any former president, Trump included, and it would be completely by the scope of the law legal, but and warranted. But I don't know. I think that power is centralized to a select few. It's probably gonna, if it does take place, it's gonna take place in the form of like some Julius Caesar type figure, falling from the graces of power and wealth that comes to save our country. And it has to be a strong leader. We can't have pussies anymore, because pussies don't win. We need someone who's actually going to put these people in prison if needed, exercise, the legal code surrounding treason against these people, and make examples of them so we get our country back in order.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lofty goal and an admirable one, but perhaps we will actually see America become a player in a world order where it is no longer the dominant figure. And I think that's one of the reasons why America is so dangerous right now to the international world as a whole, because it is a beast in its dying throes, and that is frequently when they are most dangerous.
Yep, 100%. Empires are most deadly when they're rising and when they're falling. And right now we're definitely falling. And, there are people in these positions of power that do kind of embody a similar spirit. You look at people like Roger Stone. He was one of the most, smeared men out of the whole Trump movement, the MAGA movement. And you have to ask the question, why? And the answer is because, like, he's friends with the LaRouche people. I don't agree with LaRouche people on everything, but, like, they don't want war with China. They want to work on a world land bridge. They want to work with China on the Belt and Road Initiative. They want to work with Russia. It's like they want to help industrialize Africa. But again, people like Roger Stone do represent a tangible challenge to the Malthusian doctrine and to what the globalists want. So it's understandable that they've got a target on their back now. But, there's been many people in these, I mean, even going further back in American history, look at Abraham Lincoln. His economic advisor was Henry Carey, who's one of the most like based economic theorists that I think our country has ever seen in these elite institutions. So I think that it's possible. I don't think it's all that mighty and hefty of a goal. I think it's probably gonna happen. I just don't think it's gonna be pretty.
I do want, since I have, I think, 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4 of some of the best Twitter trolls on this podcast right now. I do want to ask, or maybe segue into like this whole weird cultural, I don't even trend, cringe. We'll give a cringe alert to the listeners, but maybe like the Paul Massaro. What do we call him? Paul Masarenko. Paul Masarenko, Sarah Ashton Cirillo, NAFO, whatever they're called, kind of like being invited to the White House, or to, I don't know if it was the White House or just to Congress or whatever, how like absolutely asinine and also hilarious that this is, and like that it's a humongous scam money grab. But yeah, I kind of wanted to get how much enjoyment you guys get out of kind of trolling these people. And Fabushka ratioed Michael McFaul today, which is always excellent because he's an absolute disgrace. But I find the whole thing fascinating because I find it to be such a strange cultural developing. I mean, it's horrible, but it's also very cultish, and which I'm fascinated by. So I'll just open up the floor to you guys since you guys all kind of get to commune with them on Twitter.
I'll just say that it's all so fake. To tie it back to the conversation about Daria. None of these people know what it means to kill someone. None of them, anything that they say about like any physical threats, any of this stuff, they have no idea. They'd never do this. So that's why I challenged Chief, NAFO officer Adam Kinzinger, who's a congressman, in the last days of his service as a congressman, to a boxing match. And I challenged him to a boxing match because it is the most primal representation of like whether or not you're a man or whatnot. And like, I knew that if you could expose these people in real life, like they'd probably shut up a little bit more. So if I beat the shit out of Adam Kinzinger, that'd be a bad look. But of course, it got like thousands of likes and like it ratioed him, whatever, and then silence. That's the one time they're silent, is because they're so weak all they have is this like fictitious world that they live in on Twitter, which really means nothing. They're just trolls.
Yeah, I deal with them all day. That's my primary contribution to this Telegram and everything. And they're like the kids that got bullied in school. They got bullied and then they got online, and it was the only place that they could actually do some bullying. And if you were ever bullied, or you got over it, or you were the one doing the bullying, you know that what they're saying just isn't real. It's all a facade. It's this fake strong guy stuff, and it's tiresome dealing with it. It's all the same, and it never original. They're the most unoriginal group on Twitter. It's just insane. They just copy paste, and
Their memes suck.
they're so bad. They're so bad.
Like, what even are those memes? Like, I with all the money that we're probably like funneling to them in back channels, you'd think they could have like better PR people. Like, their memes suck.
I hope that they're young because of the way they talk. You think that being a younger crowd, you would be on it a little bit more, and it's just so bad. And if it's a psy-op, it is the worst psy-op in existence.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You go ahead, James.
Oh, yes. But we were talking before about class consciousness, and you mentioned, of course, blue-haired baristas. But here is something that I have always found interesting about the NAFO phenomenon, because I've looked at them, and as you said, a lot of them, yes, indeed, are young, or at least more of the younger demographic. And an example of this, ironically enough, is Kinzinger himself, because sure, he's now a middle-aged man, but he's not a gerontocrat like a McConnell or a Pelosi or a Biden. So in that sense, he's closer to us than he is to them. And yet, what the cause that they've latched onto is the cause of contemporary Ukraine, the same country where people in front of the red over black flag start singing permission to be a bit ridiculous and do my imitation of them.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Where they sing, Batka nash bandera, Ukraina mать, just glorying in fascism and the most reactionary and murderous ideologies, and yet they've seized on this as a kind of progressive cause. What gives with that?
I mean, they're literally, well, first of all, Adam Kinzinger has like a absolutely from Midville wife who's Ukrainian. That's I think that's like, the pussy can't be that good, and she's so fucking mid, and like she's Ukrainian, so I think he's doing most of this because he is fed. I mean, he's like CIA, FBI against Trump, all that stuff, but like he's like, oh, I can be that Ukraine guy and score some brownie points in bed with my Ukrainian midwife. And that's not a shot on Ukrainian women, because I think there's many fine ass Ukrainian women, not as fine as Russians, but they're close. And as far as, yeah, I mean, everything, they can turn anything into woke now. Anything can be woke, just like have AOC go out and tweet about it, do like an Instagram live about it, and wear it on her ass at a dress at some like gala, and it instantly becomes like the new woke phenomenon. It doesn't matter if it's literally Nazis now.
Давай, Фаб, уничтожай.
Jackson, hi, this is Fabushka. I'm a big fan of yours. I wanted to start with that. I like what you do. I follow you and all your debates at all times. But going back to Adam Kinzinger, I think the segment that was on TV on Fox News about him was just hilarious. I mean, I just was laughing nonstop. It was a masterpiece. But going back to NAFO or NAFO, I think they don't even deserve to be called cringe. I think they're just mostly lonely, mentally ill people with self-esteem issues that are looking to belong. But they are led by very smart and advantageous groups that scheme these people for money. Georgian Legion is the best example of that, and it's just funny that none of them even question it.
No, they don't know anything about this. They like don't know about the Georgian Legion. They don't know what the Georgian snipers were doing in Maidan. They don't know any of this stuff. It's like, they'll tell you some fairy tale about the Georgians and how they're saving the day, but simply they just don't know. So yeah, they are taken advantage of, but and yeah, you're right. It is powerful people. Like, think about this. We know for a fact that the Ukrainian Ministry of Digital Transformation runs these Ukraine discords, like these NATO discords, and then they target people like all of us for censorship or demonetization. And it does have like a very tangible effect. I'm probably losing out on probably like $40,000 a month just from what they've been able to accomplish in demonetizing my YouTube. So it is very tangible. They're powerful. And I mean, I haven't, the worst part of all is like, you never get through with these people. It's like, there's no point in talking to them, because unlike any other political group I've ever seen in my life, there's no way. It's just like, it honestly just feels like they're bots, because any other group, even the worst of the worst, like the K Hive, the G Hive, whatever, they always have people who kind of come around and they're like, hey, look, bro, I used to fucking hate you, but now I see what you're saying. With them, I've never had a Ukraine supporter that's like, you know what, I see what you're saying now about this whole Russia-Ukraine business, and you're actually getting it right. Never. I'll have people say, like, I talked to Jackson in person and he was nice. He wasn't a dick. I thought he might be a dick. But never do they say, I agree with you. So I'm just so hesitant to believe that these are real people and this isn't an entire bot farm.
Speaking of the Ministry of Digital Transformation, I will now segue into the greatest cringe of all time, known as the Defense of Ukraine channel. I'm sure we've all seen it on Twitter. It is by far the most horrific mental degradation I've ever seen. It's like it's run by a fucking 15-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah. They're the ones who got me demonetized. And so one of them, I went to UCLA, the college in Los Angeles, and I went to go and I put up a sign that said, Putin is good, change my mind, like the Steven Crowder debate things. And we amassed a group of kids that were all yelling at me. And one of them wanted to debate me. And it was, live and learn. I now tell people if they want to debate me, we have to record it, because this kid said he didn't want to be recorded. And I was like, you know what, whatever. So I talked to him, and he was from the Defense Forces of Ukraine, or whatever the fuck that Discord channel is called. And he was saying stuff to me. He was defending Bandera. He's like, well, he of course, he was like wearing glasses. He had he had two masks on. This scrawny little, looks like preborn inbred fuck. He's like, Bandera wasn't really like a Nazi. He just wanted a free Ukraine. And these are the things that they believe. They earnestly believe these things. And it's, again, very scary that they're as well organized as they are.
Yeah, they're just rewriting. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Jay, go on. But no, we're all laughing at the preborn inbred fucks, as it were.
Yes, I think that's a good line. But also, I think for our listeners, it's good to come up with an example of defense of Ukraine, and also for the cringe, and to ask about that for what makes this so appealing, or how people, or at least a number of people, don't see it. So, it's a 15 June 2022 tweet of Alexei Reznikov of at NATO headquarters in Brussels. It's in the NATO headquarters building, which is one of these modern glass within glass buildings. The sun is shining in. He's looking up and to the left, striding forward purposefully, and it reads, Year 9 of the New Age. Council of Elrond is bringing together free nations of Middle-earth to discuss how to prevail over the evil from Mordor. Delegation is led by Alexei Reznikov. That's a real tweet from the Defense Ministry of Ukraine, and there's no like ha 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 laugh, in it to be like, we're just telling a joke. Come on, guys, it's like real stuff. It's like, but okay. How then does that draw in so many people, and why does it inspire people, and how can this keep going when I think to most normal people, because at least when I've shown this to other people and I've said, I think the Ukrainians might be insane, they look at this and also Kuleba's tweet, but that's a separate issue because he's the foreign minister of, we could be the first country on earth to establish digital diplomatic relations with other countries, i.e. email. As an example of their insanity, most people I show that to are like, what did I just read? But how does it draw people in? How does it inspire somebody like, because getting into UCLA, you're already the elect. You're part of the elite. It's very difficult to get into that school, at least in terms of book smarts or even doing the test smarts. You're supposed to be smart and at least be able to identify patterns. How does this draw people in who are of an elite and supposedly critical thinking background?
Well, these people are not critical thinkers. They're thinking, what is it that society tells me is going to be the road to success? You have these. Okay, let's take the UCLA example, for instance. Okay, they're book smart, whatever. But is it really that smart to go to this college institution that's going to cost like tens of thousands of dollars every year? You're going to be almost $100,000 in debt by the end of it. You're not going to probably get a good job. How do we know that? Because if you see me pulling up to, for example, I went to UCLA last night for this for the Nutcracker ballet, the LA Ballet. I have a Rolls Royce that's driving me to the Nutcracker. I pull out the Rolls Royce with like this smoking hot blonde 10. No one who sees me roll up to this event thinks that I did this by going to UCLA and being a brain dead liberal that went like $100,000 in debt and now works as like an intern for some Democratic congresswoman. It's like, this is not how the world works. So these are people who uh are good at following the rules. And the rules right now tell you that Slava Ukraini is in and you have to support it. And if you don't support it, you're going to be canceled. They're very good at that. They're the best at that. And that's why they're so dedicated now that they've literally created this, massive Discord effort to censor it. And I'm sure they're going to come target all of us again because we're talking about them. But literally, like, they're parasites on this earth. They're the cockroach beneath my foot. They're literally like they're the piss on the street of Los Angeles that I have to walk by. It's disgusting, these people. And what's disgusting of all most is that they're pretty good at what they do, other than the memes.
We've touched a little on the cringe, and now we've got some subscriber questions. The first of which comes from another one of our contributors and friends, who is a big fan of yours, Jackson. But Russian-based posters, the Medvedevs and the Kadyrovs of the world, how would you rank them in terms of just how brilliant their posts hit?
Well, I don't know. I have my preferences. Of course, I love Kadyrov. I think Kadyrov's so base, but Kadyrov is like such an alpha energy. I know he doesn't post anywhere, but you hear the clippings of him, you hear when he talks. Obviously, like, I kind of like the approach that Putin takes, and it's not an approach I take, but he's like Sigma to the max, and he's so subtle in his like roast. Like, when he was sitting down at that I don't know where it was. I think it was in St. Petersburg. He was sitting down at that summit and he told a joke about the European energy crisis and like the German child who was like asking.
Oh, it's Valdai.
Valdai, okay.
Debate.
So yeah, so it's like he has such a way with it, and it kind of reminds me of like, I guess if there was like a middle ground between those two, I love Lavrov as well, but if there's a middle ground between like the Putin energy and the Kadyrov energy, it'd be like Kim Jong-un, and that's why I love Kim Jong-un so much. I know it's a completely different part of the world, but I love Kim Jong-un and I love his energy a lot.
I'm so glad I found somebody else who absolutely loves Kim Jong-un.
Yeah. He's so based.
Right. Any more questions while I peruse some more subscriber ones?
No, I'm good.
I would interject with a bit of a comment here. Whenever people, go on about, oh, NATO's so great and so on, you have to always remember that they are the unfortunates who didn't go to Yavorov and get liquefied with the rest of the Redditors.
I just heard a story there. You guys have probably seen it. There was like that UK soldier that came back home, and the video has like millions of views already. He's talking to some other Brit about volunteering in Ukraine, and it's like the first 24 hours he's in Ukraine. They're like on the border of Poland or something, and they have like a big like international volunteer facility where they kind of like onboard everyone and go through like basics. They don't even shoot. Well, I mean, most of them don't even really get to attempt shooting a gun before they go to the front, but they don't even go through any military stuff. It's just kind of like an onboarding place. And within the guy's first 24 hours there, the Russians like just like absolutely obliterated it. They hit like 4 different buildings, and just the scenes from there were, I guess, were horrific. But like that's literally the future you face if you want to go there. I don't know why
Yeah,
anyone would want to go there.
that was Yavorov.
That was that guy. Okay, yeah.
Well, yeah, Yavorov was at some point
That was the place.
a Soviet training base. Yeah, it's now
Yeah,
flat, but
yeah. I don't know. It's like who wouldn't want to have who would want to go up against the Chechens? Like what type of a silly move is that? The Georgian Legion. Okay, Georgian Legion. We'll see you on the front. I'm gonna have the Chechens by my side. Good luck. Like shut the fuck up.
They're literally laughing in battle. They're just joking around the whole time. They're crazy.
Yeah.
In your video the other day, you were talking about the Royal Marines. There was that article that came out about how there was some special operations going on, and there's videos of the alleged Zaporozhye nuclear power plant water landing that came out. Ukraine admitted that they actually did do an operation, and I'm pretty sure there are Royal Marines and probably other British special forces in that landing. They all have their faces blurred out. I'm almost positive. Having worked in nuclear protection, there's no way either Britain or the US would have greenlit that operation without having at least 2 nuclear specialists and multiple of their own assets on the ground, because you cannot risk it like a nuclear accident happening by sending in untrained and unreliable Ukrainian assets. So I just wanted to say that as well.
yeah, I think we'll go from the poor unfortunate fertilizer that still remains walking in the east of Ukraine to the avatar of all things cringe, Sam Bankman-Fried. I mean, this story has been beaten to death, but it's been the most popular subscriber question. So what's your take on it? I mean, he's obviously this ultra cringe turbo virgin with the ugliest girlfriend I've seen probably in the history of the planet. But like, what is the appeal? Why is he like this? What does he symbolize? And I would like to say, for the record now, Sam Bankman-Fried did not commit suicide. It doesn't matter what happens. He didn't do it. But please, Jack.
It represents just a massive embezzlement scheme. They do these puff interviews with the dude, and they say, "Oh, what went wrong? What went wrong?" And he'll be like, "Well, we didn't have our balances right, and we weren't tanking enough in for our massive embezzlement scheme to keep it running, and that's why you caught us." But like, it's all it is. What I think, I mean, I don't have a whole lot to say about this. I talked with David Sachs about it a little bit. I have my conspiracies. I mean, so they arrested him last week. His ugly ass girlfriend went to like the AG or SDNY. She went somewhere and she struck a plea deal. That's why he was arrested. But don't we think it's a little bit funny that he was arrested literally like 2 days before his congressional hearings were supposed to start? Don't we think that's a little bit interesting? And then also, I mean, okay, so this guy is like hanging out with Bill Clinton. He's relatively a nobody previous to the whole FTX dilemma. You know, his parents are famous, whatever. But I'm just waiting. When does the Jeffrey Epstein associate line like come into play with all this madness? We saw there was a big crypto a giant who I forget which company he started. Was it MakerDAO? It was a big one, and he was like 29 years old, and he started to talk a few weeks before the SBF FTX stuff blew up. He started to talk about how there was like in the Bahamas, or maybe it was Puerto Rico. There was like a big Mossad CIA sex trafficking of children ring that was going on. Is that related? And then he died. So he tweeted that out, and then 24 hours later, he ended up dead. And he said people were there to kill me, whatever. And everyone kind of wrote it off as him being crazy, but then he actually died. Does that tie into all of this? I don't know, but I don't see how this is all going on. I mean, like, what is Bill Clinton to do? He needs to take his trips to, you know, the St. James Island. He needs to get on his Lolita Express still, but he has no one to do it with. So he's got to find someone new. And these people are all degenerates. I mean, they're vegans. They ingest like soy on a daily basis. They have gynecomastia. They look subhuman. They are probably we know they had these crazy like sex orgies with like it was like gay infused sex orgies. SPF probably getting pegged over the, you know, overlooking the ocean. And I'm almost sure that I would not be surprised if there was some like child sex trafficking involved in all of this.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either. And with the arrest, I mean, did we expect anything else? There was no way they were going to let that guy get up and talk. It wasn't going to happen.
No.
I was surprised he made it that close to the hearings before he got arrested.
I don't know how I mean, that guy has like a worse meth addiction than Hitler. Like if you see him in his interviews he does previous to everything blowing up, no one was watching it, but he was like sitting there and he was like twitching like Hitler does at the Olympics when the Olympics were there. It's like the same exact thing. This guy has that same exact like Hitlerian energy to him. There's something there.
Speaking of arrests and such, I think I'll do my final question of the day, which is about Viktor Bout and Brittney Griner. Of course, we understand that it was the alphabet mafia that lobbied her release over, shall we say, more loyal American citizens, the likes of Whalen and co. Do you think we will see more trades in the future? Because obviously this shows that the Russian MOD is an unstoppable juggernaut at this point. They've pressed through perhaps the most valuable prisoner exchange between America and Russia in years and years. Do you think we'll see more trades, perhaps for Assange, perhaps for other people?
I don't think there's any way they're gonna get Assange, but that would be amazing. I think that yeah, I mean, Putin said he's open to more. We'll see if the U.S. does it. The U.S. is just in such a cucked position. I mean, so we got Brittney Griner. Who raise your hand if you knew about Brittney Griner before all this stuff. I can't even pronounce her name. Brittney Griner. No one knew who this chick was. No one will ever know who she is again. She's going to fade away into irrelevancy now that she's back in the United States in the WNBA. This was the first WNBA trade I've ever seen anyone care about. She hates this country. Why does she even want to come back? Like, I think that if Russia had said, we're going to keep her in prison for the rest of her life, and we are going to make sure that she dies behind these bars, I would have been like, okay, fine, good. You know, that's your rules. That's your rules. Okay, these are not our rules. It's not our country. So what is she doing going in there with drugs enough to distribute? Why is she doing this? It's disgusting. And like, if I would have been completely fine and happy with the fact that if they decided to imprison her for life, they had done that. It's life. You know, you don't do that shit. And what the Russians got Viktor Bout. It's like we got a nobody for virtue signaling points, and they got Viktor Bout. That's the most one-sided trade I've ever seen in history. It proves Putin's a top G. It proves Putin is like, you know, he literally is, though I say he's Sigma, he's alpha to every other world leader right now. He's winning beyond belief, and no one seems to be able to stop him.
Well, I will raise the floor to any other questions anyone may have. If not, then we shall wrap up here.
Yeah, no, I've got in all my questions. So
None for me.
Babushka, Yistrin,
No, I'm good.
Jeb?
No, I'm gonna save it for next time.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
Well, Mr. Hinkle, would you do us the honors of plugging yourself?
Of course, happily. You can find me on YouTube, The Dive with Jackson Hinkle, and Twitter. I'm trolling there at Jackson Hinkle with 2 L's. So that's, and on Rumble as well, but that's where you can find me.
Well, all that's left is to dedicate this wonderful podcast to the Twitter keyboard warriors, the NAFO asshats, and the shitlibs all around the world. Please do us a favor, go to Ukraine and get shit. Thank you all. This has been Donbass Devushka.
Yes, you're coping and seething. The truth it is scalding, and now you are molding and coping so hard.